Hello students, hope that you all are doing well at your homes. I am BK Dikshit, TGT Science from JNB Rampur with the e-content for class 8 science, and the chapter is cell structure and its function. So before going to the chapter, I want to connect you with this chapter with your experiences and your previous knowledge. You all have seen somewhere the construction of a building or a house in your locality or in your surroundings. So what you observe when the construction work starts, the mason first of all starts with a single brick, and continuously he joins these bricks and assembles them into a beautiful building or a beautiful house. In the same way, the nature has assembled our body also with some basic units, and such basic units are called as cell. So we will study in this chapter detail about the cell, its structure, its components, various cell organelles. Then we will see the internal structure of the cell, and finally we will conclude by the differences between the plant cell and the animal cell. So first of all the question arises how this term came into the existence, or how this term has evolved, the cell word. So I want to focus on this word first of all. So this word came into the existence first of all by an English scientist named as Robert Hooke. He coined the term cell while doing some experiment with his self-designed microscope. He taken a cork slice. I want to tell, cork is the material which is obtained from the bark of a tree. So he has taken that slice and he observed it under his self-designed microscope, which is visible to you on the screen also. And when he has watched that cork slice under the microscope, he observed certain small boxes like structures just like the honeycomb, and he gave the term cell to such boxes. So in this way the word cell has came to the existence, but after he coined the term cell, about 100 or 150 years nothing was told about the cell, because it was not so easy task to see the cells in the living body. So when the discovery of the well developed microscope takes place after the 150 years of the Robert Hooke's discovery, then only it became possible to see the cell and its internal structures. So in this way today we are in a very developed position, and now we have very well defined microscopes like the compound microscope or the electron microscopes, which enlarges or magnifies the cells, and we can see each and every very minute component of the cells also. So this is all about the cell. Now come to the definition, exact definition of the cell. So just in the introduction part I have told you that just like the mason puts the bricks and makes a beautiful building which looks different outside, different from outside, but internally they all are made up of bricks assembled in a particular manner. In the same way inside our body also we have cells which are assembled together to perform various functions of the body. The brick is a non-living material, but the cells are living thing. They compose the living body. So they becomes complex during the development, and they performs their functions differently as per the need of the body. So as per the number of the cells, every living thing starts from a single cell. But in nature we find some of the living organisms having a single cell only, and they are called as unicellular organisms like amoeba, paramecium, bacteria, and so many other microorganisms. On the other side, we find that many of the millions of the organisms are made up of more than one cell, and their body is very complex. And such all organisms which are composed of more than one cell are called as multicellular organisms. So in our surroundings we have so many examples of multicellular plants like the trees, and we human beings are also multicellular organisms, and our body comprises of trillions of cells. Then come to the shape of the cell. The cells vary in shapes also. Most of the cells are spherical in shape, some are elongated, and some are spindle shaped also. The example of spherical cell is our RBC cells, and the spindle shaped cell is our muscle cells, and the elongated or branch cell is our nerve cell. Come to the size of the cells. The size of the cells also varies from a micron or micrometer to the centimeters, few centimeters. But most of the cells are microscopic in nature, and they are visible under the microscope only, which magnifies their size, and then it becomes possible to see with our eyes with the help of such microscopes. The size of the cell doesn't relate with the size of an organism. Means we can't say that the cells of an elephant are much larger than the size of the cells of a rat. The size of the cells of the rat are equally in size to the size of the elephant. It means the size of the cells depends upon the function, not on the size of the organisms. Initially, I have told you the definition of the cell, that the cell is called as the structural and the functional unit of the living organisms. Most of the times this question will come in front of all of you also, and you have to explain this exact definition of the cell, that cell, how the cell is a structural and functional unit of the cell. So during the explanation part you have seen that the basic unit of any living organism, either it is unicellular organism or it is multicellular organism, it is the cell only. So in this way we can say the cell is the structural unit of all living organisms. Similarly, we see when we study the functions of the body, either a physiological function or metabolical function, we find that all the functions are performed by a single cell. So in this way we can say that the cell is the structural as well as the functional unit of the body. Now come to the internal structure of the cell. Basically the cell is divided into three major parts, and they are cell membrane, second cytoplasm, and third the central part, and it is the nucleus. So one by one we will see all these parts of the cell. Come to the cell membrane. Cell membrane is the outermost boundary of the cell, which binds the cytoplasm and all the internal organelles along with the nucleus inside the cell. It is living in nature, it is flexible, elastic, and it has pores on it through which the transport of materials either inside or outside takes place. It is semi-permeable in nature, and it protects the internal material filled inside the cell. Yes, cell wall. In the plant cells there is an additional protective layer around the cell membrane, and it is called as the cell wall. It is rigid, hard, and non-living in nature, and it gives an additional protection to the plant cells. We know that we all are mobile in nature, while the plants are static and they remain at their place throughout their life, and during this period they face so many outside external pressures like the heat, rain, and speed of the wind. So they need some additional protection, and that is provided by the cell wall to the cells, which makes the plant rigid and hard. It surrounds the cell membrane and gives the rigidity to the plant cells. Then come to the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is the jelly-like material filled inside the cell membrane, between cell membrane and the nucleus. It composed of excess amount of water, and so many cell organelles floats inside it. This cytoplasm consists of many other small components which are called as cell organelles, like mitochondria, which you will study that it is called as powerhouse of the cell. Similarly, the plant cells have colored components inside it, and most of them is the plastid, which contains chlorophyll inside them. And side by side it also has a network of thread-like structures called as endoplasmic reticulum, then ribosomes, centrioles, Golgi bodies, like on. Then now come to the most important and the central part of the cell, which appears as a dense spherical round structure almost in the center of the cells, and it is the nucleus. The nucleus is called as the control center of the cell because it has the chemical composition which is responsible for the controlling of the cells and its functions. So it is the very prominent part of the cell, and it comprises of its own boundary wall, which is called as nuclear membrane. As you have seen in the case of cell structure also, there was cell membrane. Similarly, this nucleus also has its own membrane, and it is also porous, and through this nuclear membrane the nucleus exchanges the material between their nucleus and the cytoplasm. Then a small spherical structure is also visible inside the nucleus, and it is called as nucleolus. Inside the nucleus, the thread-like structures are also visible, and they are called as chromosomes, and they wear bead-like structures on them, and they are called as genes. So genes are the hereditary units which are present on the chromosomes, and they are responsible for the transfer of parental characters to the offsprings. Similarly, there is one more term for you, and it is the protoplasm. The cell contains the living material inside it, and it is present in the cytoplasm as well as inside the nucleus also. So if we combine these together, then the term protoplasm comes into existence. So we can say the protoplasm is equal to the cytoplasm plus nucleus or the nucleoplasm. Then certain more terms are very important for you, and it is the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. While studying the cells, you come across with these terms also, and they should be very clear to you, so that you can study the cell biology in higher classes without any difficulty. So during the formation of cells, initially the cells are formed with some primitive structure. So the primitive cells do not have a well-defined nucleus inside them. So their nucleus is, we can say, it is underdeveloped, that is without the nuclear membrane. So the cells with incomplete nucleus or underdeveloped nucleus are termed as prokaryotic cells, and they are seen in very lower unicellular organisms like blue-green algae and bacteria. Another term is eukaryotic cell. All higher organisms, including we human beings, we all have developed kind of cells in our body, and they have complete nucleus inside them. That is, nucleus is surrounded by the well-developed nuclear membrane. Such cells are called as eukaryotic cells. So I think now you are well familiar with the prokaryotic as well as eukaryotic cells. Cells also have small or large organelles, some more organelles inside them, and they are vacuole and plastids. So first come to the vacuole. Vacuole are the blank looking structures inside the cells. In the animal cells they are more than one and smaller in size, while in the plant cells there is single vacuole which is very large in size, and it occupies almost the central part of the cell, and that's why the nucleus is, so in the plant cells the nucleus is somewhat towards the periphery. Finally come to the plastids. In the plant cells some additional colored smaller components are seen under the microscope, and they are called as plastids. Most of the colored pigments are the chloroplast, which contains a green color pigment, and that is called as chloroplast. Yes. Now come to the comparison between animal and plant cells. So during the explanation part I have told you, but finally we have to again tabulate these differences, because they are useful for you to know the differences between the plant cells and the animal cells. So while you can see both the cells are there on the screen and you observe them very closely, you find that some of the cell organelles are present in the plant cells while they are absent in the animal cell. So we start from the outside. From the every cell has a cell membrane as the outer boundary wall, but in the plant cells I have told you earlier that there is one additional membrane, additional wall outside the cell membrane which protects the cell. Additionally, it gives the additional protection to the cell, and it is the cell wall. So the first prominent difference between the plant cell and the animal cell is the presence of cell wall. So we can say the cell wall is present in the plant cells while it is absent in animal cells. Second prominent difference is the presence of vacuole, presence and its number. So we have seen that in plant cells there is single vacuole which is large in size, and it occupies almost the central position of the cell, and while in animal cells we find that they are many in numbers and they are smaller in size. So regarding the vacuole, we can say in plant cell vacuole is single and large in size, while in plant cells vacuoles are more than one and they are smaller in size. Third, presence of nucleus. As we have seen that vacuole occupies the central part of the cell, so the nucleus is pushed towards the periphery in the plant cells, while in animal cells mostly the nucleus is present in the central part of the cell. Next difference is the presence of plastids. In plant cells we find that green colored smaller cell organelles are present throughout the cytoplasm, while they are not visible in the case of animal cells. So in plant cells we can say in plant cells plastids are present, while in animal cells they are absent. So in this way these differences gives you a complete picture about the similarities and differences between the plant cells and the animal cells. So in this way, through this chapter, now you got the complete idea about the cell, then its discovery, then its internal parts, then how cell is called as a structural and functional unit of the cell, and finally having studied the internal structure of the cell, where you have studied cell membrane, cell walls, internal structure of the nucleus, and finally vacuole, plastids, and lastly you have concluded with the comparison between the plant cell and animal cell. So with this I conclude this chapter. Best of luck.